The European Union has just unleashed its 18th sanctions package against Russia, aiming to choke its oil and energy industry, the backbone of its finances, amid the ongoing war in Ukraine. With a stricter oil price cap and measures targeting Moscow's shadow fleet, is the EU finally set to bring Putin to his knees? Hey, it's Carlos. I hope you're doing great. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to stay updated on all the latest economic and political news in just a few minutes a day. This Friday, July 18th, 2025, the European Union adopted a new sanctions package against Russia, the 18th since the start of the Ukraine invasion, with a clear goal: to hit the oil and energy sector, which accounts for 30 to 50% of Russia's federal budget, according to the International Energy Agency. The flagship measure, a dynamic price cap on Russian crude oil set at 15% below the global market average, currently around $47.60 per barrel, down from the previous $60, a threshold deemed ineffective amid falling global oil prices. According to Reuters, this mechanism, reviewed every 3 months, aims to slash Moscow's oil revenues while avoiding major disruptions to global markets. Why is the EU so focused on oil? Russian oil, exported at 4.68 million barrels per day in June 2025, according to the International Energy Agency, remains the Kremlin's primary revenue source, directly funding its war effort. By lowering the cap to 15% below market prices, the EU hopes to cut this financial lifeline while limiting the impact on global prices, a delicate balance. According to the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, a $45 per barrel cap would have reduced Russian revenues by 27% in May 2025, and an even lower cap of $30, as proposed by Ukraine, could have cut up to 40% of oil revenues since 2022. But the effectiveness of these sanctions is far from guaranteed. Russia has proven resilient, as a Kremlin spokesperson stated. "We have gained some immunity to sanctions." The shadow fleet, though targeted, remains hard to control, as Moscow relies on countries like China, India, and Turkey, which absorb 47%, 38%, and 6% of its crude exports respectively. Moreover, countries like Malta, Cyprus, and Greece, with influential maritime industries, have expressed concerns about the economic impact of these measures, though Malta ultimately gave its approval. The geopolitical context further complicates matters. The United States, a key G7 member, is hesitant to support a stricter cap, preferring to maintain room for negotiation with Russia, according to the Moscow Times. Additionally, Donald Trump's threats of secondary sanctions against buyers of Russian oil like China or India could disrupt global energy markets, but investors doubt he'll follow through, fearing a spike in prices. These sanctions could significantly erode Russia's finances, limiting Moscow's ability to sustain its war effort. However, if Russia circumvents these measures again, the EU risks losing credibility, while global energy prices could rise, impacting European consumers. The EU isn't stopping there, it's also targeting Russia's shadow fleet, the 105 often aging oil tankers Moscow uses to evade sanctions, according to EU diplomacy chief Kaja Kallas. These vessels, frequently registered under flags of convenience, are now blacklisted, along with certain Chinese banks accused of facilitating sanctions evasion, though their names remain undisclosed. The package also includes a ban on transactions with the Nord Stream pipelines, rendered inoperable since unexplained explosions, but which Russia is considering restarting. Other sources confirm the scale of these measures. Bloomberg reports that 20 additional Russian banks will be cut off from the international SWIFT payment system, and restrictions will target fuels refined from Russian oil in third countries, such as a refinery in India partly owned by Rosneft. The Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air notes that previous sanctions have already reduced Russian oil revenues by 38 billion euros since 2022. But enforcement remains a challenge, with 54% of Russian oil exports in May 2025 still carried by ships under G7 flags. A post on X by @Javier Blas highlights that Moscow has often bypassed these restrictions within weeks, raising questions about long-term effectiveness. What do you think? Will these sanctions be enough to force Putin's hand, or will Russia find another way to adapt? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this report, subscribe and hit the like button to stay tuned for more economic and political analyses. See you soon.